story time. It is fucking story time with Hatchet, and I am here chatting with Staxx.
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Hatchet. What's up, Hatchet? How you doing?
What's up? I'm doing good.
We're going to get into your story today. I saw you on TikTok, and you seem like a very interesting person. You got your story time and all that.
Yeah, I just have fun with it for the most part. It's more like anger management some days.
Yeah. So where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Colorado, and I grew up in Commerce City, Aurora, Denver. I lived all over Colorado. And then
were you into motorcycles at a young age?
When I was little, my family got hit with RICO down there. That's how I went into foster care. I went through 32 foster homes, 16 group homes, and 3 correctional facilities before I was 18. And my family, they were all into motorcycles down there. And when they hit a RICO, I watched the feds take them. And then they didn't check our apartment upstairs. And that's where me and my little brother was. My little brother almost died up there. If it wasn't for me actually breaking out of the house and going next door and getting eaten by a Rottweiler, they would never found us.
Your family was involved with some craziness. Do you remember some of it when you were younger?
Yeah, I do actually. The first time I ever saw a tattoo was actually in a clubhouse, and that drove me to actually want a tattoo. So
how old were you?
At that point I was 6 years old. Like, I remember my younger years better than I remember yesterday. That's because of all the trauma I went through. My mom, she come from Wonderland, Wyoming, and she was the first woman to ever actually ride a Harley up there. She was pretty known growing up riding a Harley. That was her first transportation. And then my uncles, all 6 of them, used to ride for clubs.
Was that your mom's brothers?
Yes. All different dads.
Up in Colorado. So this was in Colorado back in when was this? The 80s?
So yeah, in the 80s. So my mom and all them, they actually moved from Wonderland, Wyoming. I'm not going to say no club's names on here. They actually helped move a founder down from Wonderland, Wyoming down to Colorado. That's how my whole family ended up moving to Colorado. And then I was born in Colorado. I was the first one born in Colorado.
Was your father, you don't have to say the name, but was your father involved with the clubs?
No, actually, I don't know my father. I don't even think my real mom knew my father. So my mom was a stripper and a hooker. So she met all these guys because it was easy money for her. And that's how she moved throughout the biker world.
See, a lot of people don't understand that other people go through things like that. And they think the way they grow up is the only way that you grow up. But when people hear your story, they're going to be like, holy shit, it's really like that out there. We're here to show what it's like.
And that's a fact. So I didn't really get into motorcycles till I was 32 when I came out. And the funny thing is I've done almost 10 years county time. And I jumped state to state. See, I was transit all the way up till I was 32. So I lived in this state for a little bit, and then I moved over here, and then I moved over here. And one of my foster dads, really after I became 18, he was more about, hey, man, you need to settle down. And he'd bail me out all the time. And he actually adopted my littlest brother. I got caught up in West Virginia, domestic assault between me and my second wife. Lived crazy life with her. We're only married 29 days, and dope strung out, and I ended up losing everything up there. So I went through the jail system up there, and I didn't have nowhere to go. And my foster dad's like, if you come down here, go to this halfway house, which was a Christian halfway house, then we'll talk about finding you a house and, you know, a job and all that. That's how I met my third wife, because she would travel 2.5 hours 3 times a week just to come see me. I met her off of Plenty of Fish. So I get out in the free world, and I'm sitting there, and she's like, you do tattoos? And I was like, yeah, baby, I do tattoos. She's like, well, I know this group of bikers, and they always want tattoos. Well, I hit them up online and said, her. I'm like, yeah, I'll talk to them. So, and that's actually how I got into the organization I'm with, to find out that they're the other organization. And they didn't say anything till I patched out. And then they're like, oh, those are fakes, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it went down. It went crazy there for a little bit. Everything's starting to mellow out just a little bit.
When was your first time going to prison, and how long was it for?
So I didn't ever go to prison.
Well, jail. You've been in trouble quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I've been in a lot of trouble. So first time I actually got locked up, I was 16. I wrapped a 5.0 Mustang around the light pole while the cops were chasing me. And well, the thing about foster care, a lot of people don't know, is that every foster care child has a lawyer. And so my lawyer fought it for me, and she goes, well, we'd just get him into the foot center, he'd be all right. And so I only did a year for there. And then I got out. I'm 17, almost 18. And then I did the same thing again. And then I got out when I was 19 on that one.
Were you stealing cars, or would you buy
Yeah,
them?
I was stealing them. Yeah. I learned right then and there that Illinois is not good for me. So I've never bought a Mustang because of it.
Yeah, the real wheel drive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's funny is the first one I stole, shit, the cop watched me steal it. And when I took off, that's when he chased me.
So you've been to county quite a bit.
I've been in plenty of times.
First time you were in county, what state was it? West Virginia?
No, first time I ever went to county was out in Colorado.
How is that county?
Huh? How was that county?
Yeah, how was it?
So a lot of people don't know, out in Adams County, the jail used to be the foster care place, and then they switched it over to cells and everything. And it looks like an ice cream cone, like ice cream container.
Yeah.
And there's 4 piers right there. So I was in the bottom pier, and it's all open pod, basically half cells. That was a piece of cake because I knew everybody there. And then I'd walk in there and they'd be like, "What's up, Chris? What's up?" And my biological name is Zachariah Summers. So I didn't change my name till I was 19, 20.
How'd you get the name Chris?
So I went to a foster home, and there was literally 6 Zachs in that foster home. And they're getting confused. And then my real mom kept on finding me in the schools. So they changed my name for the safety of me. So they switched my middle name with my first name.
Oh, so your middle name is Chris.
Yep. Biologically, my middle name is Chris. But they did a legal name change, and they moved Zachariah to my middle name.
Does it feel different when people call you Chris?
Well, I'm so used to it now. I mean, that happened when I was 10. So I have half, like my biological family, they'll all call me Zach. And then like my foster families, if they're before I was 10, they call me Zach. Afterwards, they all call me Chris. So it really depends. And then a lot of my family calls me Summers, and then my foster family calls me Rankin.
No, so you
So,
have a ton of different names.
yep. And actually, it's funny when they did background on me to join this organization. They like, who? What should we call you? What? Like, they did a paperwork of all my known associates, and it was probably 250 known associates that I hang out with. They're like, what the fuck? So I was like, that's just foster care, man.
Yeah, it's a
And
lot. You get to know a lot of people, right? Throughout
oh
the
yeah.
system.
So like with the group homes, a lot of people don't know is that one day you'll have this set and like a month later you'll have another set. And what I'm talking about is one day you'll have Crips and then you'll have Bloods, then you have Mexican Mafia, and then MS-13 started pushing through Colorado when I was little. So we end up having a bunch of MS-13. I mean, I've met all kinds of people. It's unreal how many people I know.
So all these kids would start joining the gangs when they were
Oh,
in the
yeah.
foster care.
Yep. And a lot of people don't know is that when I was a foster kid, most of us packed. Like we'd hide our pieces outside. So we just grew up that way. I got jumped when I was 15. I got my first paycheck and I was like, damn, I've never seen this much money before in my life. Right. And I was riding the zero down on Colfax. And I got jumped because I pulled out my money and paid for the bus ticket. And it ended up landing me in the hospital. That I ended up having to have my jaw wired shut. And I was actually going to a private school, and that teacher, he come down there. He paid for my whole schooling and everything. But he come down there, and I said, look here, I don't care. I will carry my gun to the school. And he was like, as long as you turn it in, because he dealt with all the problem kids. And when I'm talking about problem kids, I mean, I was stealing cars, always riding around fighting. Time I was even 10 years old, I was already doing ecstasy and everything. So it didn't matter. I didn't really care about my life till I was 32.
Then things start to change, right?
Things really started to change. A lot of people want to talk about, the bad side of clubs. And I glorify clubs, man. If it wasn't for a club, like all my brothers wouldn't be here because we have a set of rules that we live by, and it's better than the law. Because here's the thing about the law: they only want to incarcerate you, they want to lock you down. Your brothers keep you accountable, and by our bylaws, you're not allowed to go out there and do a criminal act. They don't want you to. And
See,
a
I
lot of
think a
people,
lot of people out there, they think that these clubs are criminal organizations. They call them gangs. They put a bad name on them. When I
yep,
think they like with you, they helped you get structure, right?
yeah, they really helped me get structured. They helped me so much. I actually started seeing the truth out of my one foster dad. And he's a military service. He highest decoration out in the police out in Colorado. He ran CMR investigations. He was the one that started it. Pause for Patriots, war hero. And to me, growing up, he was a joke. I was like, yeah, I ain't listening to you. That's all against the Constitution. I've always been about the Constitution. And so I argue with him all the time, and he'd try and stop me. One time I think I was 11 and I was living there because I lived in and out of his house like 4 times. I could only stay there about 5 months before he'd send me to a group home or something. He's like, nope, he hasn't learned his lesson yet. Kick me out of the house. And one time I busted this kid across the head with a big old wine glass, like wine bottle, because everyone's doing that recycling. And this dude thought he'd jump me. I grabbed that bottle, boom, busted right over his head. And he actually arrested me for that.
How old were you when you met your stepfather?
So right after we went into foster care full time, it was 2 years right after. So I was about 8 years old when I met him.
Was it hard growing up with someone with that caliber, because they're kind of strict, right?
Oh yeah. So he put me through Young Marines. I lasted probably like 13 months. But then, you know, I was a problem child. Everything I already knew how to work the child foster care system, and a lot of people don't know these kids. They learn how to work that system. Like I'll walk up to some of the biggest clubs, right, and I'll look intimidated. But that's just how I was raised in foster care. If you always look smaller, then they don't expect what's going to happen next, and then they're like, "What the fuck? I didn't know he was like that." It's the same thing with foster care. I knew if only way to get out of group home is to look small, and then I get into foster home and I'd run away, or I get in a foster home and I caused so much chaos that they had to move me to another home. So I kind of grew up that way. Just I didn't like anybody. I knew who my mom was. When I watched my mom get took away, I was like, automatically everything was fuck the system. I have FTG tattooed on my chest. I've had it since I was 13. Like I literally tattooed that myself. And my foster dad tried to get me into the military, and the night before we actually were going to go meet the recruiter, that's when I stole the 5.0 Mustang. I was like, fuck you, I'm gone. And I had a goal. I didn't want to go no system. I was tired of being locked down. But, you know, it took till I was 32 to actually realize I was going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, what would you have done different if you could go back?
Tell you the truth, I would actually finish school. I'd probably, I tell foster kids now, even if it's the worst foster home, at least it's a one foster home. Because when you get bounced around, a lot of people don't know, you know, that they're hurting the foster kid, but at the same time, and it could be 100 different ways. And see, in the 80s and the early 90s, the Jim Crow laws just came out of effect. And a lot of people don't know the Jim Crow laws. That is segregation laws. That was, and they're mixing, you know, blacks with whites with the foster care system. Like I lived in a black foster home, I think about 6 months before I bounced to another one. Then I lived in a Mexican foster home. I don't know how many different cultures I've lived in.
What
And
kind of craziness have you seen in the foster home? Have you seen abuse and all that type of stuff?
so there's this famous case where this lady was put in foster kids in a dog kennel out in Colorado. So I lived next door to her. When she got busted, I was living next door to her. Another thing, I had a friend named Timothy, and me and him see foster care systems. They'll do these like meet other foster kid groups. So the foster parents will go there. So I found this one guy named Timmy, and he was living with his mom part time and foster home part time because they're doing transition. Well, the foster parent that he was living with first, she ended up passing away. So they decided to put him in another foster home. And 2 weeks later, he was blown up by a meth lab. And that's because, you know, you'll have 300 foster kids to one caseworker. You think they're actually checking these houses out? No, they rarely even check the houses out.
Oh, so the people that he went to, they were cooking meth, and the house blew up with him in it?
Yep. Killed everybody in that house. I also know my buddy Logan. He has cuts. I swear it looks like football pads on him. And the reason why that he's that way is they actually held him down and was putting cigarettes out. And it was a black family that was doing it. He was a white boy. So he didn't know how to control situations like that. So he learned, hey, if I cut myself, I can move to another foster home. So he's finally like a little bit stable, but it took him until he had his daughter at 26 and she got taken away. He tried to hang himself. Neighbor found him, but I watched him walk down the street one time and these guys pulled a knife on us. He goes, "That's a beautiful knife, but mine's sharper." And he about cut off his own arm.